So we're in the studio of Sally here at Moogfest in Asheville, and this is Sally.
Hi.
So I got the iConnectMIDI4 Plus with me. That's been a long time waiting to be available, but finally it is, and I've been beta testing this device, and Sally was interested in how to be able to hook this up into her setup, right?
Yeah.
Because she's not really been using the iPad with any of her existing production gear, so this is just going to be an exploration of, you know, what the iConnectMIDI4 is able to do and the questions that you have, Sally.
Okay. Well, I've mostly been wanting to, as I upgraded my iPads and all these cool synths keep coming out, and I buy them and I play with them on the iPad, but then I have these nice MIDI controllers.
Yeah.
And I would love to be able to use them as a serious plug-in to my entire studio environment.
Yeah. So the first thing that we already did, so we plugged in a USB cable here to the back of the iMac. And so if you go to the back of the iConnectMIDI4, you can see all these DIN MIDI inputs in case you use that. You could also connect it through Ethernet if you want to use some network-enabled devices that send out MIDI. But the first thing we're going to do is to plug in the USB cable here, and immediately the iConnectMIDI4 will be seen as an audio device and as a MIDI device on your computer.
Cool.
So if you now go to the audio MIDI settings, for example, somewhere in there, let's see where it is. There you go, iConnectMIDI4 Plus. So you can see that it's got a huge amount of MIDI ports.
Yes.
And likewise on the audio devices, the window that's right beneath it.
Mm-hmm.
Just click on the window to the right. You got the window
Right here.
here. Well, you can see that the iConnectMIDI4 Plus appeared.
It is right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Click
if
that.
you click it, it's going to add itself to your aggregate device.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay, so we've got in your aggregate devices, we've got two audio devices now. So we've got your Apogee Quartet and the iConnectMIDI, meaning that as far as your computer is concerned on macOS 10, it will see these as one combined device. And so your Quartet has 12 audio inputs. iConnectMIDI4 has 4 audio inputs, which will give you in any audio software 16 combined inputs. Likewise for the outputs, you've got 8 outputs for the Quartet and 4 for the iConnectMIDI, and it's going to give you 12 outputs. So this is something you're going to have to be aware of, because you'll be using those 4 last inputs and 4 last outputs to actually communicate with any of the devices that are connected to the iConnectMIDI.
Right.
So that can be a little bit tedious at times, because you have to remember that. So, okay, it's going to be these channels at the end.
But I usually set that up in my DAW.
Yeah.
And then I know, you know, where it is.
Unless you start changing the devices that are part of your aggregate device, and then it can become confusing. So one of the things to realize, though, and that is part of what makes digital audio, is that if you don't have a common clocking mechanism between different digital audio devices, in this case the iConnectMIDI4 and your Quartet, they will be running on different floating clocks, and you will get these sampled messages in on different streams, and they might not match up, and then you can clicking. So one of the things to do here is to select the clock source in your aggregate device that you already did. You selected the Quartet, which is kind of picked by default. Usually you will take the one with the most stable clock, and I suspect the Quartet to be the most stable clock here.
Yeah.
And then you've got this right-hand column in your audio devices that says drift compensation, where you've got a little checkbox. And that is actually going to resample the audio signal. If you click that to the right of the iConnectMIDI4, there, then you can see it puts a little waveform to the right of in the left-hand panel. There's at the bottom it has put a little waveform to indicate that the iConnectMIDI4's audio signal is going to be resampled, and it's put a clock icon next to the Quartet.
And where is this waveform? Is it
to the bottom left? You see, yeah, there.
Oh, right there.
Right, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And right above you can see the quartet is a little clock, meaning it's a clock master.
Okay, so this is the slave.
Yeah, so this is going to be resampled. It's not going to be the slave because you don't have a clocking signal. Signal. It doesn't use word clock or AES, digital clock signal. So but it's going to resample the audio signal.
Okay.
This is going to reduce the quality a tiny little bit, but I challenge you to hear it.
Is there a way I could connect the clock if I wanted to?
No. So with the iConnectMIDI,
so this is what we need to do.
Yes, this is what you need to do. iConnectMIDI4 doesn't have an external clock input. So if you don't do this, you will occasionally hear a crackle when the samples just don't line up.
Right.
Right. So that is one thing to do. At this point, anything that is connected to the iConnectMIDI4 will be part of your audio setup on your computer, and you will almost hear no latency. Well, I don't hear it anyway, and I perform live with it.
Okay.
So let's go over the iConnectMIDI4's connections real quick. So the physical ones.
Yeah.
You've got two up front there, two for DIN MIDI, and then two other ones that are for USB connections. So you can connect these USB ports to another computer, but what we're interested in here is to connect it to the iPad. So you can put this into, for example, the first slot, and then you've got the cable has a 30-pin connector to one side that goes straight into the iPad, and that is actually going to carry all the required signals. So you'll have MIDI going back and forth. I think over, I can't remember the exact count, but it's an insane amount of, I think it's 16 different MIDI ports. For each device that you connect like this,
right?
Yeah, which each then have 16 different MIDI channels, of course. But you could actually have theoretically 16 different apps running on the iPad that each use a different MIDI port that can each independently be driven by your computer or by anything else that is connected to the iConnectMIDI4. And as far as the iPad is concerned, it will see a 4-channel audio interface. So you'll have 4 channels out and 4 channels in. By default, it will be sending out, most applications will be sending out on the first 2 channels and receiving from the other 2 channels. Now the reason why I set it up with 4 channels is because that actually allows you to start quite easily, for example, raw audio out of your iPad into the computer, use some effects on the computer, route it back in, and for example use loopy like what you were trying to use, so that you can have a synth running in the background.
So I can have any mode going through loopy.
Yeah. Wonderful. You could do that with audio bus also.
Yeah, right,
but
exactly.
If you want to do it with a computer, for example, use some effects that you only have on the computer.
Right.
I do that. So I run some of the synths through the computer, process it, get back into loopy, and then I get the signal back into loopy on 2 other inputs, and it goes back out on 2 other outputs also.
Okay.
So this can be nicely separated to stereo buses basically. And so if you launch AnyMoog now, you'll see, and this is a little bit tedious because the iConnectMIDI4 has got so many different MIDI input devices, and if you go to the setup tab, you'll see this insane amount of MIDI devices that it's connecting, that are available. And actually, in this case, depends on which app you're using, you can not actually see the differentiators. It's just saying iConnectMIDI4 ICM US.
Yeah, because there's something over here that you can't see.
Exactly, and that is, in reality, it's going to be USB 1.1 or 1.2 or 1.3, indicating that this is the first USB port, and then the different MIDI ports inside that USB device. So one of the ways of working around that, but we don't have it installed here because all the configuration for iConnectMIDI4 is saved inside the device. It's flashed to the firmware, to the firmware. So you've got a configuration utility that's called iConfig, that's free, that you can download. It works on the iPad, it works on Mac, it works on PC. That allows you to actually selectively turn on ports that you're using or not. Likewise for the audio ports also. So if you're only using 1 port, for example, on the iPad here, or 3, you can just turn 3 of them on and it will become a little bit clearer.
Right.
And so what you can do then here is you can, for example, select the first USB port there. Yes, and that is where it's going to be receiving data from. Likewise, if you select the first USB port for the output, if you have, so you don't have that extension bought for AnyMoog, but you can buy an in-app purchase for AnyMoog where you can use it as a MIDI controller, and then anything you do on the pads here, so the sliders will go out. Well, there are other apps that do that probably better than AnyMoog anyway. So, now we can try to get some MIDI in there.
Okay, and I need to set up
let's see what kind
my
of stuff
controller into my keyboard into
so
here.
what is your keyboard's output?
It's MIDI channel 1 USB. So
it's USB?
Yeah.
So you've got different options here. So either you use a computer to start routing, because your keyboard is going to be seen as a different USB MIDI device, right? That is not part of, let's say, the iConnectMIDI.
Or I could just plug
routing.
it straight in here, right?
Or you could plug it straight
should we
into
try
the
that?
ICM4, yeah.
So let's just get another MIDI cable.
Yeah. Well, you could plug it in as MIDI, but you can also plug it in as USB.
I mean, just get another USB cable.
Okay.
Well,
you could just take it from the computer. And so that brings us to another port actually on the iConnectMIDI4 Plus.
In the back.
In the back, you actually have the ability to connect MIDI devices directly into it. So it's able to act as a USB host as well as a USB client. So as far as your computer is concerned, whatever we've done until now was a USB client.
Right.
Right? Well, in this case, it is a USB host for your MIDI keyboard.
Right.
And it is able to actually combine all these things and act as one device as far as any of these devices are concerned. That is kind of the main power of the iConnectMIDI devices, is that it turns this into a very comprehensive one-stop location for everything that's MIDI related. And interestingly, you could plug in a USB hub in here and I think connect, I might have to check the number, but it's 8 external MIDI devices. It might be 4, I'm not sure, which is a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
So at this point, the thing though is that we're going to require iConfig to actually do the internal routing inside the iConnectMIDI4, right? So there it goes. So we've got the software loaded. It detected the iConnectMIDI4 Plus.
Okay.
Okay. And now you get access to everything.
Okay, great.
Right? So you can go to port routing, which is what we're interested in now. So it's this is the second tab. And now you can see here all the different device jacks. So you've got the iConnectMIDI4 USB that I said before, 1.1, which is the one that the iPad is connected to.
Right.
And so the way this is structured is that you have the sources to the left and the destinations where it's sending to the right. And you can turn on each destination that you want it to route to. And it can go to everything or just to one. So this is up to you to decide. And so what we want to do is actually the opposite. We want to get your keyboard into this device. So we've got to scroll down. So you've got the USB host jack there at the bottom, 1. There you go. So it's 8 devices, I remembered it correctly. So you click on the first one. And so what this is now set up by default, it's a little bit weird. It's set up, that's probably because this was a beta device and I don't know in which state I got it after they tested it. So it's set up to send to the USB device jack 1 port 7.
Okay.
Right? Which is a bit strange.
Yeah.
So what you can do now, for example, is, and this is something that a few people have suggested them, a clear all, so that you can more easily get to a clean state. So now, since everything is unselected, it's not sending to anything. And if we send the host device 1 MIDI output, so there will be all MIDI channels of that device, right? So this is seen as a separate port. If you want to send it to the first MIDI port that is going to be used by the USB device connected to the first jack.
Okay.
Right. And so once you've done that, normally it should start working. Yeah, so I get MIDI in here.
Yeah.
And you can see it highlighting, right?
Yeah.
So I think I just had to switch tabs before it saved it. Because that's the thing though, is we don't get audio. Why?
Right.
Because this is actually sending through those two audio channels that are going through the iConnectMIDI4.
Right. So
right?
we have to have an audio output on the computer somewhere.
Yeah. So what we had was those this aggregate device where you have channels in terms of, so these are the inputs, the four last inputs are the iConnectMIDI device.
Right.
So we'll have to have channels 13 and 14 of your aggregate input device being routed to whatever you've got set up for monitoring.
Right. Which I usually run it through my DAW.
Yeah.
So, and I probably have to do a new audio I/O setup to recognize this, right?
Yes. So you already had something set up for
I had the
13,
quartet and I had this, the PreSonus set up, and the continuum through my input.
Yes, but your aggregate device has completely changed, right? Because all these devices
are right, they're not all there anymore.
That's what I said. So this can be a little bit confusing.
That's right.
So what you have now, if you go back to, so let's go back to the audio MIDI setup. You can see that the quartet has got 12 input channels.
And we don't have the built-in anymore.
No. And we've got the iConnectMIDI4 has got the other 4. And if you go back to the song setup in Studio One, you'll see that it's got 16 input channels.
Right. So we didn't need to add that one probably.
No. So actually it was already set up as FS7 to 8.
Right.
Right. So, but these actually don't match your configuration
Which is
anymore.
okay for this test.
So it's gonna be, we'll have to be careful when we're going to do the routing to the output.
To make sure we're in the right place.
So it's going to be FS7 to 8 in that temporary configuration.
Yeah. So I'll set up an audio channel, stereo, and it's going to be FS7.8.
Output. Okay.
Okay, and we put it on.
So you can see the audio coming in if I touch the iPad.
Yeah.
Now we just need to route it to your monitors, but they're actually off. So. No, I turned them off.
Yeah. Fun. Yeah.
It works really great in terms of latency, in terms of audio quality.
Yeah.
And so what I then also do is I have a second iPad actually connected here, and I can route audio between both iPads.
And you could just get any. Is this a special
This is
interface?
a special cable, yeah. So you need to get it from them.
And there's a lightning.
Well, they have a lightning version.
What is it? Lightning version, yeah.
But they didn't have it yet when I got it.
Because I have an iPad 4 that we could hook up as well, but you don't have the cable.
I have the cable with
do?
me, yeah. But actually, I guess I've got my iPad here.
Yeah.
So I've got my iPad Air here. So what I did was I just put the Apple 30 pin to Lightning connector.
And that works fine?
Yes, but only the Apple one.
Right.
Don't get any of the cheap Chinese ones. Even the Apple ones, apparently there was a batch that was bad. Some people have a converter that actually doesn't work.
And do you
so well.
worry about playing live with such a flimsy connector on that? How do you deal with that?
I do worry about it. So what I do is I've got a stand where I actually snap this to the stand so that this
so it'll be a strain relief.
Yes.
Yeah.
Without that, I wouldn't be playing live with it. So one of the things that I really like about this also is that you can kind of dynamically connect your devices, as you just saw. And since this is going to be the audio setup, the stable thing, they can come and go, and it will route automatically through the channels that you're interested in. So for example, I can use a synth here. I don't know which one. There's so many to pick.
Yeah.
Actually, let's try. So let's try 2 other channels in your DAW there.
Okay. Two mono channels or
No,
another
the
stereo
same
set?
one, but I don't know how you did. We have a setup for that in the audio, because we had FS728, and it would be the next ones.
Let's check it.
No.
So we could add 2 more then.
So add stereo. Yeah,
Okay,
that's gonna
and we
be
have to apply it. So that's just gonna be, we'll call it ICM.
Okay.
All right.
So this comes in here, and now what I've got set up, but I'm not sure how if you can multi your outputs, but if you output this back to stereo 1 and 2 input of the iConnectMIDI4, this audio is going to be sent back here, and you could have it on loopy, for example.
Cool.
See?
Yeah,
So
that'd
that's
be really neat.
that's something that I also do. So,
So can I just use a conventional MIDI maybe and hook this one up? I just MIDI out to me in here.
Yeah.
And then we just have to use the configuration program to map it?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
The thing is, if you want to continue using your VAX, we'll have to put a USB hub in between, right?
If I'm just using a DIN connector?
Oh, that would be fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would work. Yeah, that would work. It's actually got a whole bunch of DIN connectors on the VAX also.
Right.
So one of the other things that we don't really demo at the moment, but it's since it's got an Ethernet connector, you can actually just plug that into any Wi-Fi router.
Yeah.
And then use any core MIDI enabled device that is able to talk over Wi-Fi, like an iPad or an iPhone, or even a Mac, to also get MIDI information wirelessly in and out.
Nice.
So this is what I'm kind of considering of using for additional control. So the wired ones would be for the very fast connections from our controllers that send out all these fast messages. But if you just want to turn a knob or flip a switch or something like that, that can be wireless. It's not really a problem. And so that kind of allows you to do a lot more even. So yeah, that's a little overview of that. A nice thing now is that you can also record it straight digitally inside your DAW.
Right.
So they really become part of your workflow.
So I guess if you just had one iPad, you could just USB it in, and there would just be a simple I/O.
Well, that's the problem. That doesn't work.
That doesn't work.
So that's something that the iConnectMIDI devices solve. So they've got another version that's smaller, the iConnectMIDI2, where you just connect one iPad.
So this one means you don't have to use something like this
Exactly.
to get a decent quality audio, because you don't need an audio interface for your iPad.
Exactly.
It becomes part of your overall environment, and you just only need your master audio interface.
Exactly. Another thing, if you use, for example, the I/O dock, this is going to do a DA conversion. And then afterwards, if you want to get it into your DAW, you've got to do an AD conversion again.
Right.
So you're going to go down quality.
Right.
Also, just to be kind of down to earth here, the DA conversion here
is nothing in the same league.
No,
yeah.
it's really basic.
Yeah.
And the MIDI input on this is kind of horrible because I had one. I still have it. I kind of ripped it apart because I tried to improve it. I miserably failed. There was one guy that posted the tutorial.
I saw a guy where a guy put a bunch of other MIDI USB hack on it.
So I tried to go through that, but it didn't work with the USB hub that I had. So I ended up with something that was really not working at all.
Yeah. Well, I saw him. No, I have actually hooked this up to a Behringer foot pedal.
Yeah.
and use Loopy successfully, but you know, I wanted to do more, and especially get the audio out. But the ability to sit there and have this and have a nice soft synth, and then bringing it back in and using Loopy, that's like gives you like 10 times the capability.
Exactly. And what I really like about this also is that it's nice to work with real knobs and faders, but the thing is, we're using generic MIDI devices for this, so it's going to be your Kenton, it's going to be your Arturia keyboard, and so the knobs don't have any personality.
Yeah.
The fact that it's on it's an iPad app, even though it's not physically tangible, they still have an identity based on the synth.
I can play my Arturia and pretend like I have my own Mini Moog back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you can just reach out and touch the knob that makes sense.
Let's. I'd like to set that up with this and play with that a little bit. Can we do that? Let me go get a MIDI cable.
Yeah, so the iConnectMIDI4 Plus is about half the size of this, I think. It's got one benefit though, it's that it's bus powered, so you don't need a power adapter.
Right.
But when it's bus powered, it will not power the iPad either. So it kind of depends on what you're doing. If you're working for many hours at a time, you'll probably want to connect it with a transformer anyway.
Here's the MIDI. And I guess this one must have gotten unplugged. So this is my Mini Moog.
So what is happening actually now? I think you're playing both at the same time due to default routing. Try again. So this is kind of nice because you can start layering sounds with multiple iPads actually.
So what I'd like to try, just as a fun experiment, is to set up an old patch.
Sure.
Just as if I had a Mini Moog.
Go ahead.
So can we get it to where we're not getting
let's
both signals? I'd like to keep the Animoog on this keyboard, and I want to set up the Mini on this one.
So let's go back to iConfig. So which DIN jack is this? This is MIDI DIN 1. So DIN 1. Which you can see is being sent to all USB devices.
Okay.
So what we want is, we don't want it to the first iPad that we plugged in. We only want it to the second one. So I'm gonna uncheck all the others here just to not get any routing that we wouldn't want. Can you try again?
So now if I could have this up here and use it as my programmer.
Yeah.
You know, it's been 30 years since I had a Mini Moog, but I was back there doing this. It was like, I know the panel. It came back and it was a similar experience.
Amazing.
You know, to play a real keyboard and have that going on.
So yeah, I think that's one of the things that the iConnectMIDI enables is really this, it makes all these great soft synths on the iPad with the tangible interfaces part of your setup, basically. Both MIDI and audio, which is kind of the new thing, the audio part.
Yeah.
Anything else?
So what else does it do that we didn't talk about?
I think we covered most of it.
I think it's going to have to be kind of a no-brainer if you've got a couple of iPads, isn't it?
Yep.
Because it just all of a sudden makes them really nice instruments in your studio.
Yes. I think it's also one of the only devices, well, it's the only device that does this audio pass-through thing.
Yeah.
But then MIDI at that high speed, but also charges your iPads which used to be a big problem. I think only the IO dock did it before also, but then you got tied to kind of the quality of the audio signal and the MIDI input.